Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Starring Tom Cruise, Haley Atwell, Ving Rhames, Simon Pegg, Rebecca Ferguson, Vanessa Kirby, Issei Morales, Palm Clementif, and Henry Czerny, directed by Christopher McQuarrie. Now, the first time I saw this, it was in IMAX. And there will be something I was a little disappointed in when I saw it in that version. I'll get there. But the second time I went was in a Dolby Theater. So let's see how this movie goes. Let's get into it. We open in. Oh, and by the way, before I do that, welcome back Mission Impossible after Fallout all those years ago. So let's now get into this movie. We open in a Russian submarine in the Sevastopol. I don't know if I'm saying that wrong. Underwater, where there's a MacGuffin that is a key split in two halves, and as an enemy ship is nearby launching a torpedo at them, and they fire their torpedo at them, and it destroys them and killing the entire crew, which is quite a hell of an opener. In Amsterdam, Ethan Hunt, returned by Tom Cruise, is visited by a rookie of an IMF agent who brings him a package of a new mission retrieving the key and arrest Ilsa Faust, returned by Rebecca Ferguson. As she goes rogue and Ethan goes to the Arabian desert to retrieve one half of the key, and the Arabians shoot at Ethan, and Ilsa saves his life by shooting the Arabians, and one kills her off, and Ethan shoots at the Arabian, and come on, I've seen the trailers. You're not fooling anybody with Ilsa being dead at this point, as Ethan takes one half of the key, which is a really scary desert storm. And I like the scene for the cinematography as it is spectacular in this movie. Ethan enters a room interrupting a meeting with Eugene Kittredge, returned by Henry Czerny from the first film many, many years later, and director Den Linger, played by Carrie Elways. And Ethan is disguised as one of the men in the meeting as they talk about the entity, while Kittredge informs Ethan about the key as Ilsa has it, and she has, as it turns out, is alive, and Ethan takes it, and she is wanted for $50 million, and he involves his team, Benji Dunn, returned by Simon Pegg, and Luther Stickell, returned by Ving Rhames, to go after it, as well as Ilsa, but the key itself and the opening credits come up, and I really like being back with these characters as I liked them before, and I still like them now. At an airbase, a couple of agents named Jasper Briggs and his partner Degas are after Ethan, while Ethan meets with Benji and Luther and tries to take the other half of the key. And this is, as a MacGuffin, makes perfect sense. Benji sees a suspicious bag going to Venice, Italy, and Ethan walks around to find the other key half, as it is taken by a woman who happens to be a thief named Grace, played by Haley Atwell, as she kind of got on my nerves from one betrayal after another, as she keeps taking a half of or the whole key while Benji finds the suspicious bag, as its eight-wielded code with riddles, as it knows Benji's last name, saying "you are done," spelling "you are," and then of course Benji's last name, D-U-N-N. As he opens the code that says "good luck," and what is inside? Absolutely nothing, while the buyer is killed by an assassin named Paris, played by Palm Clementif from Guardians of the Galaxy. And Grace takes the key and goes to Terminal E while at an airport, and they abort the mission, and Briggs and Degas almost get Ethan down, but he gets out from the top of the building, as this whole sequence is a hell of a lot of fun. Grace gets arrested by Italian police and brings up all the passports. She gets her lawyer, who happens to be Ethan, is pretending to try to get her out, while she is being chased by an old enemy of Ethan's named Gabriel, played by Issei Morales, is going after her, as well as the two key halves. As she tells him there's a party going on the evening at midnight in Venice, Italy, while he gets her out of here, and she pretends Ethan touched her inappropriately and gets away by car, while Ethan goes after her by motorcycle and she gets hit by Paris. And I'm talking about that person, but anyways. He tries to help her until Briggs and Degas come at the wrong time, and Paris attacks and have a shootout until Ethan and Grace get in a car and makes her drive, which is a great first half of the action scene. Paris goes after them and they bump into the motorcycles, which was hilarious to me as Paris catches up to them and Ethan drives away and gets a yellow Fiat 500 as it goes super fast, and that looks like a lot of fun of a car to ride in. The cops and Briggs and Degas follow them while they go up and down, and Grace takes the wheel and goes in circles, which was pretty funny to me as she drives in a tunnel and Ethan turns them around, as does Paris, and they get stopped by the cops and they get away by going in train tracks while Paris bumps into the cops and Grace gets away again, and Ethan almost gets killed by the train until he gets out successfully and holds the wheel. And Benji, Luther, and Ilsa show up to pick up Ethan, and they drive a boat to Venice to go to a place where they talk about the party Grace is going to be at and is being held, which happens to be by the White Widow who hired her, returned by Vanessa Kirby from the last movie. As he learns about Gabriel using the entity, and Ethan and Ilsa go to the top of the building and have quite a view. And can I confess, I always wanted to go to Venice, Italy for how beautiful the location in this movie is, proving me correct, as well as the Italian food. Ethan and Ilsa go to the party while Grace is there, and so is Gabriel, and Paris and the White Widow sees them on camera while Briggs and Degas go inside the party by force, and the White Widow calls up on Ethan, Ilsa, Grace, and Paris to her private area, and they talk about the key to open the entity. And as we get the great shot of Tom Cruise looking at the entity, it looked fantastic. Unfortunately, the White Widow betrays Ethan and Grace and Ilsa as Ethan beats up on the White Widow's goons, and Grace runs away once again while Ethan goes after her, and she gets attacked by some goons, and Ethan saves her life, and she keeps running while Ethan continues to go after her, while Briggs and Degas try to go after him as they lose him again, and Benji, directs Ethan until Gabriel pretends to be Benji on the entity, and he and Luther smash their computers, and Benji goes after Ethan, and Gabriel gets Grace at his site while she tries to kill him, and Paris confronts Ethan with another goon. He beats up on the other goon and lets Paris go, while Gabriel almost kills Grace until Ilsa comes in to have a fight with Gabriel, and he kills Ilsa while Grace watches the whole damn thing, and she better be alive by the next movie or else I'm going to be pissed. But I really like this sequence for keeping me on the edge of my seat. Grace meets Luther, Benji, Ilsa after she's died, and Ethan, and they tell her there's three choices. One is to serve some jail time, the second is to get killed, and the third is the choice where she joins the IMF and joins the mission as they explain the plan, and Luther has no choice but to leave Ethan for being offline from the entity as they begin the mission by Grace on the train, on the Austrian Alps, disguised as the White Widow, while Paris gets there as well as Gabriel, and he locks the conductor station, while Briggs and Degas are on the train and Grace knocks out the White Widow and pretends to be her while meeting with Kittredge, where she almost gets $1 million, and she gives him the two keys and it lights up, which was a cool design, and it got me on the edge of my seat, I will say that much. Paris beats up a couple of Dellinger's men, while Gabriel gets informed about the submarine from the beginning of the movie, and Gabriel gets Dellinger killed as Paris betrays Gabriel, and Ethan rides a motorcycle and reaches up the mountain and jumps from there to conveniently on the train. And when I saw this on IMAX, the screen didn't switch from this aspect ratio to this aspect ratio. And I'm thinking it was a pointless shot for IMAX, as the other movies showed it under the aspect ratio, from Ghost Protocol to Fallout. But I'm going with it despite the aspect ratio. But the scene also got me on the edge of my seat, as this was completely intense. The White Widow wakes up to see Grace is disguised as her, as Grace doesn't make the transfer after all, as she takes off the mask and runs away from the bad guys and gets encountered by a couple of them and almost gets killed until Ethan breaks in and saves her life, and Gabriel grabs the key and runs up to the top of the train with Ethan on his tail. And they have a fight as Ethan almost kills Gabriel with the knife until Briggs and Degas comes in to stop them, and Gabriel jumps off the train, and Gabriel triggers the bomb on the bridge and gets the passengers on the back of the train, while Grace tries to stop the train as Ethan comes in, but nobody can. While Ethan has the key and Gabriel has the lighter Grace gave Ethan earlier in the film, which was rather clever. The separate train from the coaches before the bomb explodes, as it does the train getting off the tracks, and some of the coaches fall while Ethan and Grace run from coach to coach, and they're almost dead until Paris saves their life and dies, which was a hell of an intense scene, especially on IMAX. Particularly the pianos almost smashing them to death, where I was hanging on the edge of my seat, and Grace gets to Kittredge, and he helps her out as she lets Ethan escape. And as that happens with the parachute, he goes to Luther and Benji, and he gets on true ground before we get to part 2. This climax was intense, entertaining, and this movie's a hell of a lot of fun from start to finish. Now it's time for my rating. I'll give this movie a 9.4 out of 10. The cinematography looks absolutely spectacular, and some of the countries look beautiful as it's beautifully shot. And I really like the characters, as I like being around them once again, as they're great and fun to be around with. The action is exciting from start to finish, as I was having a lot of fun in this movie all the way from the start all the way to the finish, as the MacGuffin makes perfect sense to go after, and the train sequence at the end of the movie was the most intense scene in the whole movie. The shots looked fantastic, as does Venice, Italy, as I always wanted to go there, and this movie proves me correct. And the action scenes were intense, but it kept me on the edge of my seat this entire time. So this is a strong recommendation for Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1. We'll see how Part 2 goes. So I'd like to thank you guys for returning to Mission Impossible with me, and until we get to Part 2, mission accomplished.